So I've decided for now I'm just going to carry on working through Sraffa's book. I'll come back afterwards to the distinction between basics and non-basics and why I'm not completely happy with it. For now, I'm doing sections 8 to 14 of Sraffa. So in these sections, he's talking about two different things. The first is wages. So until now, so this is Sraffa's two-sector scheme with surplus again. Until now, the wages have been considered as all of the wages and means of subsistence. So it's all necessaries of life, and this 400 wheat is necessary for the reproduction of the system. But in real life, the wage isn't just going to be the necessaries of life. It's also going to include a component which is surplus, essentially surplus that is distributed between the workers and the capitalists. This is the whole point of the struggle over wages, so that workers can claim a higher proportion of the surplus. And Sraffa says that ideally you would have like a section of the wages be equated with the necessaries of life and a section which is the luxuries or the surplus product. But because most of the convention at the time is to have the whole wage as variable, then he's going to do that too. But he says that there's a problem with this, and that's that essentially by doing that you're relegating the necessaries of life to being non-basic. So they're essentially luxuries. And he writes, necessaries, however, are essentially basic, and if they are prevented from exerting their influence on prices and profits under that label, they must do so in devious ways, for example by setting a limit below which the wage cannot fall. A limit which would itself fall with any improvement in the methods of production of necessaries, carrying with it a rise in the rate of profits and a change in the prices of other products. So, if you are going to make the entire wage variable like this, there's going to be other rules in the system which mean that you can't have the reproduction of labour if that price of labour goes below a certain level. So in order to make this change now, Sraffa's going to move all of the wheat from the left-hand side of the equation. It's going to only exist on the right-hand side of the equation. And instead you're going to add in something for labour on the left-hand side. So it's now going to be 12 iron times the profit rate, and then add on some labour. Hold on, let me just write this in. 8 iron is 1 plus R plus. So if we do now, we know there's 400 here, so we do 100% divided by 400 and then times 280. Then we find out that 70% of all the labour that's going into the production process is going in here and 30% is going in here. And Sraffa's already assumed that there's a unit of labour that you can reduce different qualities of labour and so on to a specific unit. It doesn't mean that all wages are paid the same, but that there is a standard unit that you can use as a comparison. So here's going to be 0.7 L, and here's going to be 0.3 L, and then you complete your sum like this. And then the next thing you're going to do, you're going to add a composite commodity. And what the composite commodity is, it just does exactly the same thing as the kind of numeraire, the standard that you used before. So before we just crossed out the iron and we said instead of it being 8 iron, it's just going to be 8, and then all of the other relative prices can form around that because it's solid. And now Sraffa is saying instead of using one of these commodities as this commodity which is going to set the kind of volume for the relative prices, you can just make all of the necessaries and luxuries. So basically all of the final end consumption products that don't go back into means of production, you can set it as 1. So he says set this as 1. And what this does is exactly the same thing. Now, I don't really like using 1 because you just end up with really tiny figures. So I'm just going to make it 100 instead because it's the same thing. And then finally what you're going to do is you're going to give labor a number from between 0 and 100 also. If you were using 1 here, it would also be 0, between 0 and 1. So I'm going to say that, and this number tells you, so this 575 wheat is going to be labor and profit. All of the labor and all of the profit are going to divide 575 wheat between them. So here what you're doing is you're saying how much of a percentage of this wheat is going to go to labor. So let's make it 70%. And so labor are going to get 70% of all of the profit. So then you type that into your algebra calculator again. Again, I'm using Wolfram Alpha. So here again, this is what I've typed in, and the result is, so I'm going to draw an input-output table again. This time I'm going to have profit here, labor here, and iron, which is the means of production. I'm going to have iron and wheat here. Iron, we know the unit price is 2.75. So it's going to be 2.75, and the total units of iron is 20, which is going to be 55. So we know that this is going to be 55 here and here. And 2.75 times 8 iron in the iron industry is 22. And times 12 iron in the wheat industry, so that's going to be 33. Now the labor, we know that 575 wheat, which is the total surplus product, is 100. So we know that all of the wheat is going to be equal to 100. And we know that labor is 70. So we can put that here. That's the total wages of labor. And so then that only leaves 30 for profit. So the total profit is going to be 30. So now we know that labor is equal to 70. And then we can just times it by 0.3 for the iron industry, because that's how much of the percentage of labor is working in the iron industry. So 21. And 0.7 for the wheat industry, and that's 49. And then finally we've got the profit. And here's the profit rate just here. Now here's where Sraffa's done something quite odd, and I'm not sure that I agree with what he's done here. Because in the classical school you have the means of production and you have labor, and it doesn't necessarily matter if some of the wages is also surplus. You're still going to have the profit rate equalized over the combination of those two. Because as was shown before, like if you've got a particularly high profit rate in one sector, you're going to have capitalists want to come in and claim it. But what Sraffa's done here is since he's only got the straight up means of production on the left hand side of the 1 plus R, which is the profit component, it means that the profit rate is essentially it's only equalizing over the capital. And that's kind of odd. Like, it's essentially the same as, so now it's not a price of production theory of value, it's a capital theory of value, let's say. And I think so, even if you don't want to have any wheat on the left hand side of the equation, that's fine. You can still do it like, so 12 iron, if you did put 12 iron plus 0.7 L, and then 1 plus R. Well, now you'd have a price of production theory of value, and you don't need any extra information, and you don't need the wheat on the left-hand side of the equation. So if anybody watching this knows why Sraffa's done that, then maybe leave a comment and tell me, because I don't get it. So this is what Sraffa's doing. So let's leave it at that for now. So we take the rate of profit, which is 0.545455, and then times it by 22 in the iron industry, So now it's going to be 12 there, and for wheat it's times 33, so this one's going to be 18, and as you can see that adds up to 30. And now because both profit and labour are wheat, you can see easily that these two here equal 33, and that's going to exchange. So the wheat that needs to go into the iron industry is going to exchange for the iron that needs to go into the wheat industry, and you're going to ensure reproduction again. And so the point of this is that you can alter this figure here. So this could be any number between 0 and 100. And you can play around on the calculator and you can see any other rate of value. All of these figures are going to change. And he also says that it's only if you're giving 100% to labour that the profit is going to be in proportion to labour. At no other wage level is the values going to follow a simple rule, and again that's because your profit is equalizing over iron, it's not equalizing over labour in the way that you would need it to for it to be a labour theory of value. Okay, I think this is it for this section. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll leave the link to Wolfram Alpha in the box below.